I'm Bethany Waterhouse-Bradley. I'm one of the program managers at SEUPB for PEACEPLUS, and I have responsibility for the theme 5, the environment theme. So a lot of you will encounter me in various spaces. But just on that note, and on the note of overlap, we are recording this, and there are people here this afternoon that weren't here this morning. So bear with us. Those of you that have sat through the introductory slides already this morning, you're going to have to hear them again. Hopefully you'll learn something new this time as well, but we will be reviewing that information for the recording and for the people that haven't been here. We have no planned fire alarms at all, so if you hear an alarm, we need to evacuate the building. So there's exits just behind you over here and over to the right, and we gather in the car parking lot, which is just behind us. Just to let you know, you'll see different QR codes around. If you use the camera function on your mobile device, that will link you directly to a form, so that if you're interested in finding partners, you can fill out your information on there, and that will put you on the kind of partner seeking other partners registers, our little dating service for potential partners. And those of you that have purple dots on your name badges as well, it's just to give you a sense of the people that are looking for other collaborators so that you can use the networking time efficiently. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Declan McGarrigle, who is going to go through, Declan is the director of the PEACEPLUS development, and he's going to go through the background of the PEACEPLUS programme and introduce the day for you.
Thanks very much, Bethany, and welcome to everybody to this afternoon's session. So really, look, the purpose of today is to begin to introduce you to the requirements and some of the key information around Investment Area 5.1. And it's also really to introduce you to some of the key people that will be working with you really over the course of the next number of weeks. So it's fantastic to see so many people here. I know some of you were here this morning and have been at other sessions as well, but it's great to get some of the investment areas under theme 5, which is around supporting a sustainable future, commenced, and some of the environmental measures. So today, as I said, we'll give you a little bit of an overview of the context of the programme, how we've arrived at this point, and we'll set out the structure of the programme as well, and some of the other investment areas, and where this particular investment area on 5.1 sits within the overall programme. I'd like to welcome colleagues from our two, what we call accountable departments, who are match funders for this element of the programme. And they'll shortly provide an overview of some of the policy interests, some of the policy requirements that you would need to look at as you begin the development process for your project. So we have Andy Blaisdell on the panel from MPWS, and he'll give an overview from the Irish perspective. And we've also got Maya Taylor from NIEA DAERA, who will provide an overview of the policy interests from a Northern Ireland point of view. So you're very welcome here today. Later on in today's session then, we will have a presentation by Fergal O'Donnell from Insight Solutions, and Fergal is working with ourselves in SEUPB to manage and deliver the pre-application support for Investment Area 5.1. And Fergal's been working with us on some of the other investment areas as well, and he'll set out what some of the advice and the guidance and the process is from today onwards. So this is a new thing for our programmes. This is a new process, I suppose, in terms of this pre-application support. It's not something that we've done before under the current PEACE and Interreg programmes, and it's something that you can really make use of in terms of elaborating on your project idea and your concept. And as I say, engaging with Fergal, kind of going forward from here as well. So that's just an outline of today's session. It is a short session, but it's going to give you a lot of information. And everything that we do today is recorded, and it'll be available on our website, along with some other resources as well. And we'll touch on some of those later on. I should say at the outset as well, if you've got any questions, please make a note of them. We'll get through all of the key information because it might answer some of the questions that you have. But at the end of the session, before we finish, we'll take some questions from the floor. And there will be opportunities beyond the day, through Fergal. If there's other questions that come to mind or other points of clarification that you require, you can feed those back to yourselves. And we're constantly developing a set of frequently asked questions, which is already available on our website. So it's something that you can refer to as well as an additional resource. But just hold the questions and we'll come to you towards the end of today's session. So the PEACEPLUS Programme, how did we get here? We got here with the support of the NI Executive, the Government of Ireland, and the UK Government and the European Union. So there was a lot of engagement with those organisations that are going to be providing the funding into the programme. So obviously the NI Executive, the Government of Ireland are providing the match funding, and then the rest of the money is coming from the European Commission and the UK Government. It's important to note that the programme is building on the current PEACE4 and Interreg 5A programme. So some of you might be involved currently in projects around similar activity as what you see in the programme overview document. So it's building on that, and it's important not to lose sight of that. We don't want to just rip things up and start again. There's, yes, new projects that we want to see coming forward, but it's also about building on existing activity as well. This is a PEACE programme. It's the PEACEPLUS Programme, and we no longer have two separate programmes. We no longer have an Interreg programme and a PEACE programme as two separate but interlinked programmes. So it's important to bear that in mind as you're feeling your way about this and developing your concept. Always be thinking around the lines of how can this deliver around peace and reconciliation. Even if it's an environmental project, how are you engaging with communities? How are you delivering on peace and prosperity? And that's the overarching objective of the PEACEPLUS Programme, right across all the themes and investment areas. So again, that's something with Fergal, and as you're developing your concept note, that you can get some advice from us on, but it's important to be thinking along those lines. And all projects obviously are contributing to cross-border collaboration and development, and economic and territorial development as well. So again, kind of that peace and prosperity angle. How do we deliver through these projects under 5.1 a more stable, a more sustainable, and a more prosperous society, which then can make a contribution to peace and good relations. Many of you will have engaged with us, really dating back now to 2018, 2019, when we went out and had a lot of stakeholder engagement. We had thousands of people that we engaged with in person through stakeholder engagement events. We had, I think, around 450 survey submissions that were submitted, which was a fantastic response and showed the interest in the programme. And all of that led then to the various themes and investment areas that I'll talk about in a moment. And we had a public consultation in 2021, which really rubber stamped and supported then what we had designed following all of that engagement. And we also then, have continued with that bilateral engagement with particularly our policy departments and accountable departments on a north-south basis. The programme area is Northern Ireland and the border counties of Ireland. That's where the focus is, and that's where impact has to be felt from any project under the programme. That point, the last point at the end there in terms of bullet point, is about participation from partners outside the programme area, and that's something that is certainly eligible. So if you've worked in the past or want to work in the future with partners that have a lot of experience and a lot of kind of best practice and can share things with the overall partnership and can engage in pilot activity, then that's something that's encouraged and can really add value to your partnership. So there's partners outside of the programme area, they can get involved. There's a huge and significant investment that's been made by the European Commission, the governments north and south, and the UK government into the programme, over €1 billion. And that's more than twice the total value of the current PEACE and Interreg programmes. So it's really significant in terms of that financial allocation that's been made. And that's been divided up then across each of the 6 themes and 22 investment areas. And you can see those on the slide. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on them. There's a lot of information that's available on our website. But you can see, theme 1, building peaceful and thriving communities. Theme 2, delivering socio-economic transformation and regeneration. A focus on our young people and continuing that focus on our young people from the current Peace 4 programme under Theme 3. And then Theme 4, healthy and inclusive communities around cross-border health and social care and a number of other areas. And then Theme 5, which is where today's investment area sits and where 5.1 sits within the overall structure of the programme. And that's around supporting a sustainable and better connected future. So you can see a range of different areas in there, and we had the session this morning on 5.3. There'll be a session in the next number of weeks, or the next couple of months, on marine and coastal management. And we've already had a session, for example, on geothermal as well. So all of those areas potentially might be of interest and of relevance to you as well. And then under Theme 6, building and embedding partnership and collaboration. You've got projects there that can come forward around strategic planning, looking at the challenges that exist because of the existence of a border, and and how we can navigate our way around that through collaborative engagement on a north-south basis. And then also we have a flagship element of the current the new PEACEPLUS programmes around small grants activity and small grants programme. And there's about 40 million euros under Investment Area 6.2 and also under Theme 1 that's been set aside for small scale or small grants up to 100,000 euros. So that's another potential avenue that may be of interest, and that will be something that will be starting later this year. There's a huge and diverse range of investment areas here, all of which will have separate calls for applications. There is a degree, obviously, of interlinkedness in terms of the different areas, but it is important, if you're here today and you're interested, look at those other investment areas and see what opportunities might exist for any of the ideas that you have or your organisation has, or indeed communities might have. I think this is a really useful slide just to have at this point in the process, and it just is what we call the project life cycle. And a lot of you will have been through project development and implementation before, but I think it's just a useful kind of slide and cycle to show you at this point in the process. So we're really at the very start, up at the top there, in terms of 5.1, at the pre-development stage and this pre-application engagement that we're opening up today. And of course, many of you will be coming here today. Maybe you've already started your development in terms of your project and your partnership. But some of you may just be starting out and really looking for more information at this stage. So that pre-development, the pre-application stage, is about the elaboration of the idea that you have, and then translating that, if you want to, into a concept note. And that's what Fergal is here to review and engage with you on, and he'll talk a little bit more about the concept note later on in today's session. And then Bethany's already referenced it in terms of partner search, the QR code and the network, and it was great over lunch and just before the session started today to hear so many people talking and networking, and hopefully people sharing details and information about what it is that they're developing. So use today from that point of view, and also going away from today in terms of putting your details up on our website. If you are looking for partners, that's something that we can facilitate. So we're very much at that top part in the life cycle, and then we'll move on to the real application development, the much more detailed application that will come when the call opens later this year. And then if you're successful, then you move into contracting and starting your project, so contracting with SEUPB, and then through to the implementation of your project. So everything that you've said in your application form, then delivering on that and everything that's been agreed. So it's just useful, I think, to show that, and you can kind of refer back to that when you receive the slides after today. But today, is about 5.1. It's about protecting biodiversity, nature recovery, and resilience. And Building a Sustainable and Better Connected Future, which is the title of Theme 5. And environmental projects and calls have been at the forefront of the Interreg programmes to date. Obviously, this is now a peace programme, and going back to what I talked about at the start, it's about thinking about that sustainability angle from a peace and reconciliation point of view, as well as cross-border engagement and collaboration. But we want, through the support that the funding is providing, to contribute towards creating places where people want to live, visit, and invest, and creating sustainability that works for everyone. And again, just to kind of pick up on that point about where this sits, within Theme 5, and you can see the various areas. And as I said, each of those investment areas will have separate calls. So there may be one or more areas that you may be interested in, and it's important just to flesh that out a little bit more. So the objective of this area of the programme is to promote enhanced protection and preservation of nature, biodiversity, and green infrastructure. So it'll promote cross-border collaboration and cooperation to facilitate the recovery of selected habitats and species across the programme area. And hopefully most of you have seen the detail on our website around some of the priority species and habitats, and that's something very much to reflect on today and as you're developing your bids. And it will result in the increase in the surface area of those selected habitats and habitats for species. So more areas protected through the support of the project. And the investment area and projects then should make a contribution to delivering improved and restored habitats, and to do this through increased defence against threats from invasive alien species, enhanced resilience to climate change, and of course all of these areas under Theme 5 are about making that contribution and obviously responding to the climate emergency. Contribution to legal obligations and policy targets, restoration of peatland and wetland sites, and nature-based solutions to around kind of wildfire risk management, flood protection, carbon storage, and climate buffers. And it's about establishing nature recovery networks, improving public engagement and access to nature. And that public engagement bit in terms of collaborating and designing these projects with communities who ultimately these projects are going to benefit in the long run. And just finally, just in terms of the introductory slides, the output and result indicators for the programme and for this investment area of the programme. And it's again important that you refer to these as you begin to develop your bids and your concepts. But you can see them listed there. I'm not going to go through them all. Colleagues will pick up on them as well as we move through today's session. But it's about, these are the overall targets in terms of target values and the indicators, both output and results. But it's about how your project will make a contribution to that and making a significant contribution to it as well. So you can see those listed there, and they'll obviously be in the call document going forward and should form part of your concept note and your idea development. So that's just some introductory slides and words to kick things off today. What I want to do now is to pass over to our colleagues in the accountable departments and our policy departments. And I'll pass first to Andy Bleasdale from NPWS, who will introduce the policy interests from Ireland. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Declan and Bethany. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm here to give a perspective of policy interests in this programme from an Irish perspective from Ireland. And I used to often attend workshops and seminars and conferences, and the reference to the policymakers in the room was often made, and we'd all look around to see who the policymakers were. When eventually the penny dropped that I guess I'm one of them, and I'm here today to represent the policy interests of Ireland in regards to this programme. So, just to reflect on where we've come from and where we're hoping to get to. We've come from Interreg 5A, and this is the next step in the evolution of delivery of actions for targeted habitats and species that Declan already mentioned. And these were the selected features for the last programme, or the current programme until the next one is delivered, I guess. So basically focusing in on wetland habitats and species. Not much has changed this time around. In the last delivery phase, we presented maps that showed the footfall of sites in Ireland that related to those features as a kind of an aide-memoire to those coming together to form their bids and to work out which sites they would choose and select. So that's where we've come from. Maybe then moving on to where we're trying to get to. What are we trying to achieve? If you step right back from what the programme is hoping to do and how that sits in with our policy needs from an Irish perspective, what we're trying to achieve is a coherence of delivery, not just from PEACEPLUS, not just from the work that you propose to do, but how that supports a cross-border solution that's required for nature, biodiversity and targeted habitats and species. What we ultimately need to do, if I had to kind of summarise the key things that Ireland would like to see out of this programme and this next phase, what does the programme do to support, what do the projects delivered through this programme do to support an expanded knowledge base? What does the programme do to deliver action on the ground, to deliver conservation action, to deliver conservation measures? How does the project or projects garner public interest and support locally, working with landowners, with farmers, with communities, with schools, and that bigger picture that is so necessary to deliver action? We can't just parachute ourselves in as ecologists, as conservationists, and just magic up a solution. We have to work with people. And in fact, the strength of this programme is working with people and through people. How is the action informed by policy, and how does the action support policy? I suppose there are kind of questions for you to consider. And how do we build capacity, not just in isolation through academic institutions, but by delivering action on the ground? How does that build capacity for the next step, whatever the next iteration of PEACEPLUS is going to be in a number of years' time? So we need to build over time a solution that is copper fastened by delivery. And then ultimately the challenge for us all, and this is the challenge with any project you deliver, how does that demonstrate coherence with what other projects are doing, what other programmes are doing, what other work packages within your project are doing, and how does that all add up to the total need? So I guess that's the challenge for us all to consider. It's not just what I'm doing now, it's what I'm doing now and how that works with what's happening around me and how that supports the needs in both Northern Ireland and in the Republic. To align with other projects that might be delivered or programmes delivered through this project and then also with jurisdictional efforts and priorities more broadly. So that's a challenging wish list from me, but if I had a perfect delivery mechanism, it would tick all of those boxes and you would do all of those things and we'd all be happy, clappy and holding hands into the future. It's never as simple as that, but that's what we would hope to achieve through this funding instrument. So if you need to break that down then from an Irish perspective, what are we actually trying to achieve? Well, our top priority will always be, from an Irish perspective, our Natura 2000 network, our SACs, our Special Areas of Conservation, and our Special Protection Areas. And then our national network of sites, which are equivalent to the SSIs in the north, called NHAs. So these are the national designations. And what we're really trying to achieve is action within those sites, or affecting those sites, that improves the conservation status of the features protected in those sites, the habitats and the species, as mentioned by Declan earlier. And that solution at site level then contributes to addressing the biodiversity crisis and providing climate resilience in collective approaches. And then looking backwards, what have we done previously through CAN and CAB projects under Objective 5.1 of Interreg 5A? And what more can be done then in the next footprint of sites or within those existing sites in this next phase? So again, looking back, but also looking forward intelligently. So moving then beyond the necklace of Natura 2000 sites and from an Irish perspective, what are the wider countryside measures, the nature recovery networks, the nature-based projects that could support the core of the sites, the Natura sites and the NHAs, but also then provide green infrastructure and connectivity between those sites to build up a landscape level solution that is required. Because sites don't operate in islands of isolation. They need to be integrated and coherent across the network. So that green infrastructure piece, that monitoring of species and habitats in the wider countryside, birds, for example, if you want to pick out a species type or group, they don't stick within the borders of an SPA, for example. They'll move into wider landscapes. And how does what we do through PEACEPLUS then support that movement in a non-rigid site boundary perspective? And then looking at these solutions that can address the bigger challenges of biodiversity loss and climate action. And then looking at a new element that's coming in under this programme to kind of copper fasten the need to develop and progress invasive alien species within the network of sites that we're seeking to protect, but also informed by a national and cross-jurisdictional prioritisation of action that is required under shared island funding. We're pleased to announce, if you don't already know it, that the Department of Taoiseach in Ireland has funded these jurisdictions to actually progress a strategic approach to invasive alien species, under which PEACEPLUS can support that at site level. So the two items I've highlighted there in italics are the things that shared island might deliver, and then the elements below that of developing catchment level invasive species plans and action, and then delivering that at site level is something that PEACEPLUS can deliver under that broader invasive alien species umbrella funded by shared island. So we need to work with our colleagues in NIEA to work out how that umbrella can be elevated and protect the delivery under PEACEPLUS. So these things need to work together and need to be integrated, but that's the vision and that's the plan. So PEACEPLUS can't do all of that, but it can actually support what is delivered at jurisdictional level for invasive alien species. Looking then at our sites and looking at the network of sites, I've given you information and maps that I don't expect you to process here today, but these will be useful resources for you to take away with you to look at the sites we are nominating as being of priority for us in an Irish perspective within the SAC, SPA and NHA network, and then the conglomeration of those sites as they overlap and abut one another. So these are the SACs. That we've selected in a broader network of SACs. These are the sites that we think are most suitable for the wetlands theme delivered by PEACEPLUS in upland and peatland habitats in particular. These were selected from the total suite of blanket bog sites in the Republic, and those then that didn't have other delivery mechanisms like Wild Atlantic Nature, which is a big integrated project in Ireland. That these other sites then that are coming through potentially under PEACEPLUS could support a total solution for peatland restoration in that landscape. And these are the list of sites that we would have selected as preliminary suggestions to you to look at. This is not an exhaustive and an all-inclusive list. There may be other sites that you feel are better suited to your total plan and vision, and we're completely open to that suggestion from yourselves. But these are the ones we would suggest as a first cut at the SSC network in the border counties. If we look then at our SPAs, we have intersected our blanket bog SSCs, which emerged through at first cut of selection, and that those SPAs that overlap those sites or abut those sites were then pulled in as a second tier to support this total solution. And these are the sites that we've listed for that. So these are two SPAs in the border counties in Donegal and Leitrim and Sligo. Again, not all-inclusive, not the total list that you can only work from. You can actually come back with separate suggestions if that's appropriate. And then the wider suite of blanket bog NHAs in the border counties as a kind of a third tier of importance in our necklace of sites that again will form the wider green infrastructure piece, the nature recovery networks and the total solution that's required. And these are the list of NHA sites that are selected for blanket bog themes in the border counties. And I presume, Declan, that these slides can be shared with the wider group in due course in Bethany, so you don't have to necessarily be writing all of this down because there's a lot of information here. And when you put all of these three sets of sites together, you get a lot of different colours on a map. And that's what the different colours look like on a map. But it just gives you an indication of where the kind of the hotbeds of interest and importance might be in the border counties from our side of the border. So what information might we additionally give to you upon request? And you can come to us through our website, or you can come through in a data request form to actually get more information from MPWS. What are the lists of sites, potentially by feature, or the total list of sites in the border counties? For any given site, what kind of information might we have and hold that might be available on our website or separately, like site synopses, the statutory instruments that give the qualifying interest for that site, the standard data forms that underpin the designation of those sites, the conservation objectives published for those sites where that has happened, and then shape files and other material that might inform habitat mapping or targeting information relevant to the sites that would be of interest to you. And then a whole suite of Article 17 and Article 12 data that is our national reporting obligation, our 6-year reporting obligation under the Birds and Habitats Directive. Information is gathered through monitoring that would be useful for you to see as well, and that can be given upon request also. Looking then a bit more about the Shared Island Invasive Species and Biodiversity Initiative, this is the Shared Island funding piece. What is the vision of that? And I'm just giving you this as kind of background information to inform the element that might be delivered by PEACEPLUS. It gives you the potential to look at reducing risk for invasive alien species translocation across the network of sites and addressing mechanisms then through action plans to address those species and those threats for a variety of different species and a variety of different habitats, wetlands and others. And then the initiative then has 7 pillars: a strategic all-Ireland risk assessment and trend analysis to be undertaken, a biosecurity and implementation strategy to address cross-border biosecurity, catchment level aquatic management plans to be delivered, contingency plans, pathway action plans, citizen science invasive alien species programme, and then a whole suite of conferences to be delivered through that programme. So that is a separate funding tier that in a sense has nothing at all to do with PEACEPLUS, but in the broader context has relevance for what you might be considering doing within the catchments or the sites or the areas of interest for you. So the governance and added value piece then is that this was funded, the shared island funding was agreed late last year. It's to be led by the MBDC and the NIEA, supported by 2 jurisdictions, NIEA and MPWS, and a whole suite of deliberative and strategic policy directions will be provided that would inform action at site level through PEACEPLUS, for example. I've given you information here that I don't expect you to process now, but it'll be useful background information to reflect upon as you prepare your bids in the fullness of time. So looking back, if I was asked to do that, what have I learned, if anything, from my life on this earth? No. What have I learned from the last phase of Interreg 5A, and what are the screaming messages that have come through to me through that process? This is hard work, guys, and you already know it if you've done it before. There's a lot of effort and energy required and invested. But what I would ask of you is to think about what is that energy and investment of time and effort for? What is it working to achieve? What are you hoping to support? What are you expecting of the competent authorities, the jurisdictions, the NIA and the MPWSs of this world? And if all of that effort counts for nothing, then there's no point doing this. It's not just about getting money and spending money. It's about actually making a difference on the ground. So maybe that should be our focus. What are we trying to achieve, and how is that coherent? And how will that leave this environment in a better place at the end of the funding period? That would be the challenge I would set for myself in my jurisdiction, but also for you as project deliverers. What are you doing, and how is that actually making a difference? Then, in terms of just the metrics of what you do and what you gather, like data, like GIS, and coherence between work packages and between different projects across the broad programme, it all has to be adding up to something that is a total and not just bitty. It can't just be a bit here and a bit there, a work package here and a work package there. Your project has to be coherent within its boundaries. Separate projects need to be coherent within their boundaries. And if there's more than one project, there has to be a global coherence. And that has to support the jurisdictional needs of NIA and MPWS coherently. Now that's challenging. I'm not saying there's a silver bullet here and there's any advice I can give to you as to how that would be done. But I would strongly advocate that in the setting up of your projects that you would have coherence across work packages, that data management and GIS would be coherently managed so that we can get bundles of data given back to us at the end of the project, rather than just separate work packages coming back with bits and bobs. So that would be something I would strongly advocate for. And then to look at the broader environment. What are other projects delivering across other operating programmes in either jurisdiction that might be of interest, might be of value, like wild Atlantic nature, like waterlands, like agri-environmental schemes on either side of the border, like other PEACEPLUS projects that you're not directly involved in, across different themes, 5.1, 5.2, 5.3. How are they all coherent? How do they all work together? How do they add up to a total solution? So look at that. Look beyond the parameters of your own project, I would suggest, is required. And once you've all that done, it'll all be perfect. And thanks for listening, and thanks for your attention. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much, Andy. So I'm going to invite Maya up from the NIEA DAERA perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. I am Maya Taylor from Northern Ireland Environment Agency. As you would expect, a lot of our talk is similar, being so very linked in terms of both our policy from the international dimension and across Ireland in terms of climate and biodiversity. So really what I'm going to do is maybe to go faster through the slides where really it's absolutely the same work that we're talking about, the same need. And just to look at where I can add something additional or whether the policy context in Northern Ireland is set out slightly differently or information sources. In Northern Ireland, the policy priorities come from absolutely the same list of conventions and international agreements, translating then in Northern Ireland into the Programme for Government and a variety of completed or drafted without our government sitting, strategies, policies, pieces of legislation. So you'll be aware of the draft environment strategy, the draft peatland strategy, the Climate Change Act as it relates in Northern Ireland, green growth strategy. Many of these all aiming at similar things to the south of Ireland. So in terms of the Northern Ireland priorities for PEACEPLUS, again, they are absolutely the same as the south. In terms of our need for spatial planning, for protecting, enhancing, connecting areas, that bigger, better joined up nature recovery, our 2030 targets, or 2050 targets, nature-based solutions, strengthening what is there, so the targeted action that we need on sites for species, and then to join those up. And that strategic approach, for the drivers and of biodiversity loss in terms of ammonia and invasive species, and the intensive nature in some areas of agriculture. Just looking through, these really are the same as the south. So, you can review these when this is uploaded onto the SEUPB website, and, the information is there. In terms of our sites in the north, again, we're a lot of us are still calling them Natura 2000 sites, otherwise known as part of the Emerald Network. Nature recovery networks and the alien species, as Andy has covered. One, I guess, key recommendation and reflection on Interreg 5A projects is that the importance in putting together your projects to think about having the strong ecological scientific lead officer within a project, but also, if they were to leave and move on, that still is happening within a project, and to think of continuity there. Our role as departments, are as the accountable department, so we aren't able to provide significant support in terms of accuracy of habitat mapping, the monitoring, reporting. That is for each proposal to put into your submission, both at this pre-application stage in terms of identifying what you will do, and then strengthening that, if you decide to put forward one of the full bids or to be a partner in that. Things that we can provide, the baseline indicators, a list of sites, we'll bring some of those up in a minute. For each ASSI, the information, and a lot of that is on the website. I'm just going to point you in a minute to where that information is and the conservation objectives. We have some information that is available currently in terms of the all of those sites. We have other information that isn't available publicly, but that we can provide to you in terms of the draft conservation management plans for sites in Northern Ireland. These are not on the website yet because they are still being finalised, and 47 of the 57 of those conservation management plans can be made available to people who, you know, who need them to put together these applications. As has been identified, you know, I mean, the real outputs and results indicators, those N2K or emerald sites, 11,000 hectares of land to be restored is what we would hope for in terms of those designated sites, and then the sites outside those, another 5,000 hectares. That's our real hope and aim from this significant, you know, financial investment. These next sites are showing you, I guess, a list of sites that you'll be able to flick through when you download this afterwards. But what I will then show you at the end is actually how you find these on our websites and find the information about them. So the other information, I guess, that you might like is that the conservation management plans, that there is the reporting information on the JNCC website in sort of the centrally based UK system. We'll show you and put a link on this presentation as to how to get to that, because that can be somewhat tricky to find. The applications for the additional information need to come through, I think I'm right in saying SEUPB, so that there is, so not coming directly to NIEA for that information, because it needs to come out in an consistent manner, and then information like that as well, if people need it, you know, can be shared, you know, with others in the same manner. And, you know, a data sharing agreement will need to be signed for that. So I guess what I want to show you is, it's the test in our communication here. We're going to go to the NI map viewer. Which one finds by Googling it? Come on. No, definitely not there yet. Woohoo!
There you go.
All right. And you take a variety of boxes to say that you accept things, and then you get in here, and then if you scroll in a bit, it all stops at the border. You know, it's one of those things you kind of hope will merge it at some stage. And on the left, in the little layers here, okay, you can see if you click to the left of the protected areas, then you can go down and click things like special areas of conservation down there. All right, and that'll bring up all of the sites. And then we're going to zoom in to Sleeve Bay here. Up a bit. Go. No, pull it the other way. Pull it the other way, closer to the border. Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah, no. Yeah. Yeah, all right. And if you click on it, it'll give you information, okay? And then you can go to more info, okay? And then it'll take you through to things like you'll be able to download information about that site, you'll be able to download information about the conservation management plans, and it gives you a link through to the JNCC website. But when you link through there, it doesn't take you to the bits that you actually want. You have to go searching, so we will add that bit to the presentation. That's all right, you can escape from that now. I know that took a minute. So I guess, you know, that's the added bit, so, you know, that you may find useful in your project planning. So just in summary, I mean, the biodiversity and nature need, as Andy has said, it's huge. Our you know, the climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, our 2030 targets, our 2050 targets, they're huge and somewhat daunting, but we do hope that this programme will help to develop some of those projects on the ground that can really contribute to that, and that we are looking for the as Andy says, the bigger, the better, the joined up, you know, sort of across the whole island. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maya. I enjoyed that bit of collaboration and action there when they're trying to navigate around. It was good to see. So I'm just going to invite Fergal O'Donnell from Insight Solutions now, and Fergal's going to take you through the pre-application support. Thank you.
Thanks, Declan, Andy and Maya for what was really useful context setting for 5.1, folks. By now, like me, I think you should have a better familiarity and better understanding really of the expectations of 5.1 from a policy, and what's very clear is from a very technical perspective, obviously, in terms of what happens on the ground. No doubt many of you have been waiting very patiently for this call investment area to open, and obviously we have a bit to go until that happens. I look forward to working with you in the interim period, I suppose, to help you through the pre-application support, both to those in the room and those of you that are tuning into the recording. I'm just going to be very honest. I'm not a policy or specific expert in environmental area or ecologist, but I do have experience of delivering various different biodiversity, climate action programmes, and more recently a community engagement programme within Interreg 5A. So I have a familiarity with the area, but certainly not an expert, and I think just wanted to be open and honest around that. There's a role here for me in terms of, based on my experience of helping people write and develop strategic funding bids, my knowledge of peace and European funding, and my ability to sort of, I suppose, help you through the process and to give you the best value and best support in terms of giving you the best opportunity to put together a strong bid. I'm not in the business of giving bad advice, and I think we've heard today already, even in the previous workshop and now, there are elements of this where we will have to check the detail, and we'll have to converse with colleagues in SEUPB and the relevant departments and agencies to find out a bit more information as we go forward, to make sure that you are best placed with the right information going forward. So again, bear with us as we do that. And if you here this morning with Emer's presentation, mine will mirror that in many ways, obviously with a particular focus on 5.1. I'll whiz through these fairly quickly, folks, but just want to give people a sense of what we're talking about when we talk about pre-application support and the purpose of that. So if you feel, after listening to the overview of 5.1 provided by others, that you have a synergy with what's expected within this investment area, this pre-application support is really an opportunity for you to test that idea and in many ways, I suppose, develop that idea further before the call actually opens later in the year. And we'll hear a little bit more probably about timeframes later. It's intentionally not to be an onerous process, folks, and it's not something I think we should lose any sleep over. I think we're dealing with very competent professional organisations and people that will potentially be bidding for this. So really the concept note is intentionally a very short, simple, abbreviated form with very high-level questions just to give us initial sense of where your project is and what exactly it's about. It'll allow you, I think, in many ways, and I think it's, judging by the purple dots on people's chest this afternoon, I think it's a good opportunity and exciting position to be in terms of organisations collaborating and thinking about this project, this investment area, and developing their project ideas and seeing how other partners could play a potential role within that. My opportunity, I suppose, as I said, is to give your application or your concept note a review and to give you the best possible advice to make it that a stronger bid going forward. Critically, I suppose I've been involved in 1.4 re-imaging communities, and I spent a lot of the time in that particular measure actually saying to people, you know what, this maybe is not for you. Or maybe in some cases it was difficult in the capital programme to think about how they would align themselves with potentially other partners, because we don't want people going through the onerous process of developing full applications and all the resources that would take, knowing full well that that probably would not be competitive in a competitive process. So, in many cases, it may be a case of either saying, listen, this is not for you, it's not a good fit, or in some cases, maybe look at it, if you don't put your name on the website around, and again, conscious of privacy and use of people's information, but asking permission to maybe link people or allow people to collaborate if I see those synergies across the various different concept notes that are coming forward. So hopefully that in itself will be a useful process. Oh, jumped on one. Yeah, I missed a page. So just in terms of the concept note, just in terms of where you can get it, obviously from the SEUPB website, folks. Advice is available pre and post completion. So before you complete it, you can, if you wish, touch base with me to find out, if there's any questions you might have, and if I can allay any concerns or address any issues, please do take advantage of that. We've set, I suppose, with Easter and all, we've set 10th of May as a sort of deadline for the receipt of those concept notes, and obviously those can be emailed to me at the address provided. I aim to, I suppose, as Emer talked about this morning, folks, I know I've been in your shoes too. I know what it's like when you don't get sort of feedback from people or a prompt response. So I will try to be as efficient, as effective as I possibly can in this process, and certainly make a commitment there to get back to people within 15 days of making that submission. I do think, and learning from 1.4, there's only so much you can tell from what people put in the concept note, and those meetings with either lead partners or involving maybe multiple organisations maybe might be useful certainly to unpack those, and will be useful, sorry, I should say, to unpack those and to really delve a bit deeper into the detail, so that I am more familiar with where you're going with your project, and that I can give you the best possible feedback and advice at this stage, and also, as I said, liaising with my colleagues in SEUPB and the relevant agencies. So I'm going to take you through, I've kept this as simple as we possibly can, folks, and I think, as Emer mentioned this morning too, it's probably more difficult for you to probably complete this because of the restricted word limit. I've sort of give you a guide of 500 words. We're not pedantic around that, but I just wanted to do that so that there's no expectation on you to go write chapter and verse around each of those questions. So again, just at a very high level, question one, just tell us a little bit about your project, and really what we're looking at in this, just how it aligns with PEACEPLUS. You've heard the presentations from Andy and Maya in terms of the strategic priorities across both jurisdictions. You get a sense that Declan and other colleagues haven't dreamt this programme up in a darkened room. This is very much to feed into wider outcomes, wider goals and priorities across both jurisdictions. We want to hear about how the project promotes cross-border cooperation. Again, very much important in terms of the recovery of selected habitats and species within the target area. And again, Declan had a slide up earlier, and I haven't repeated it just for the purpose of just keeping this straightforward around outputs and results. So we want you to give us a sense, even at this stage, to what extent you can contribute to those outputs and results indicators. One sort of, I suppose, importantly, how the project builds upon existing practices and contributes to wider strategies. Again, within Andy's and Maya's presentation, you hopefully will have a familiarity around what is expected within that. And I suppose lastly, and just to summarise some of the programme priorities, and again, Declan's slides alluded to this, you can see the synergy here with both Maya and Andy's presentation here, specifically around increased defence against threats from invasive alien species, enhanced resilience to climate change, nature-based solutions to mitigate and adaptation. It doesn't have to be all of these, you should say. It could be some legal obligations and policy targets relating to favourable conservation status, restore peatlands and wetland sites, provide nature-based solutions to wildfire risk management, flood protection, carbon storage and climate buffers, and establishment of nature recovery networks, improving public engagement and access to nature. And lastly, the point around peace and prosperity. And again, I suppose from people coming from Interreg perspective, maybe that might be a little bit of the more difficult aspect of this, around how the programme will contribute to peace and reconciliation outcomes around that you expect from a PEACEPLUS programme. And it's important that applicants start to consider that within the design of their proposals. I find anecdotally just that the environment and the type of projects that we're considering around this have been a great way of actually connecting communities, bringing communities together, communities in some broader sense, and encouraging participation from across the board and on a cross-border basis. So I think there's the door is open, you're pushing an open door here in this case to that particular point. Really, in terms of the next question around the outputs and results, just to get into a bit more detail, and again, we want to sort of see how your project outputs, what you consider clearly linked to the project output indicators and targets that we mentioned earlier, and that their contribution to the programme targets is actually sufficient. So again, that is to be considered within your concept note. Does the project target particular sites and habitats? And again, there's a supplementary guidance which will be on the SEUPB website, which will help you identify, when we talk about target areas or specific sites, those priority habitats and species across the programme area. So that will be available on the SEUPB website. Does the project involve site restoration and conservation, to support selected species and habitats, etc.? Does the project help or contribute to new green infrastructure? Our purpose is other than adaptation to climate change. So again, that is very much, hopefully, familiar terms with you and will be very much central to your project. Lastly, on this particular part, does the project support the development of joint strategies and our action plans focused on biodiversity, nature recovery and resilience or invasive species? And how many communities and participants will your project engage with and benefit from the activities delivered? Again, we've put that in there to get you thinking about not just the outputs in terms of hectares, in terms of land and the extent of that coverage, but also thinking about the communities in which you could engage with through this project. And again, that might help you start to think about that particular peace and prosperity aspect of this programme. Again, the third question was really around asking and teasing out the idea of, and some people hate this, around being innovative, but obviously what we're trying to do and think about is, how does the project really start to build upon existing programmes and projects and successful implemented projects, but look at the evolution of those in terms of how those can build upon good practice going forward. And again, how does the project create added value? You know, what's that additionality that this particular funding brings? Andy talked about other programmes and other investments in this area. So it's important to also look at how this particular, your project, I should say, can consider those other areas of funding, other potential projects, and complement those and avoid any duplication and displacement. So again, that's really important and critical, particularly in the context of this particular call, over and above maybe even what I would consider in other areas where maybe duplication and displacement could be argued. I think in this particular case, it has to have synergy with wider work that exists and that is also in the pipeline. Again, similar to Emer's presentation this morning, a really critical part of this, folks, is around the project team, who's going to take this forward, you know, the lead partner, who the other partners may be within this programme. Declan referred to earlier around associate partners, and we'll probably help you with some sort of terminology around that. But there's a lot of work for you to do around actually crafting and putting together the optimum team, I suppose, to be able to deliver on the various aspects of this particular project. Maya talked about even maybe expectations around particular key roles, like the ecological scientific officer. So it gets you thinking about the type of personnel that you would require to be able to deliver on the technical aspects of this programme. There's the community engagement elements, there's the project management elements, there's the evaluation elements, there's the monitoring and reporting elements. There's a number of different areas in which this programme you will need to consider how you will be best placed to deliver on them. We want to know, obviously, in terms of the added value that's created through the partnership. So why and how has this partnership been developed and what added value it actually brings? And again, it's not a determining factor on success, but we'd like to know, I suppose, you know, has this partnership worked together in the past on previous projects of similar type and scale? Again, that gives us a sense of whether, I suppose, the processes and procedures are in place and track record is in place from previous projects. And again, Andy and Maya will speak better than this on me, but you will have heard that technical competence. So, it's important that organisations will have that within their armoury, and also the necessary capacity and the financial resources to implement the project. And again, the point that we've talked about around the lead partner in particular, and having the ability to financially underwrite the programme and to manage a large-scale EU project with multiple stakeholders is critical in all aspects of PEACEPLUS programme, and specifically within this particular investment area. And obviously, again, I'm asking a lot in 500 words, folks, and feel free to focus on some areas over and above other areas, but some sense around how you would then, through that partnership, maybe continue to mitigate some of the risk. The last thing, folks, just in terms of, I've covered those points, just in terms of value for money, and obviously we're asking people to put together a very high-level budget. Again, there's a number of areas asked for within the concept note. It's up to you whether you do have something to back that up in terms of the detail behind that. There are some parameters in terms of percentages around flat rates for direct staff costs and travel subsistence, you'll see within the concept notes. We'd ask people to give consideration to that when you're actually developing your concept note. That's important from a point of view, I suppose, in terms of establishing the value for money aspect of this project. As Emer talked about earlier, I keep referring to Emer, it is a tendency, I suppose, to sometimes overinflate maybe costs at this stage, but it's about being realistic, because if you have an idea of what it is that you want to do, you should have an idea of what it is that it's going to cost. So please just do bear that in mind. And again, we're at the very early stages, so don't expect specific detail on that, but certainly at a high level, that would be certainly advantageous. Just in terms of the lead partner role, I've touched on this, but there is onerous responsibility in it. I don't think there's a race in any area of PEACEPLUS for people to be lead partners, because just of that accountability and responsibility that those lead partners will bring. I've listed there just some similar to the presentation around project coordination, the financial management just of the programme, both as in terms of resourcing that, but also in terms of the accountability aspect of that. We've talked about in terms of reporting, and we know, although I believe lessons will be learned from previous programmes, there is still a large element and focus on reporting and accountability. And Andy's alluded to, and Maya alluded to, the need to produce data which across jurisdictions, which will helpful in terms of informing an evidence base around the impact of this programme. So there's additional elements to this that I think people need to consider over and above just the standard reporting process that you would expect from SEUPB, because we're looking to feed into data across the island. Communication, again, there's responsibility both on the lead partner and other partners then to abide by the communication. There's a responsibility for training and for partners and other partners involved to be involved in both the training provided by SEUPB and others to ensure the smooth implementation of the programme, and obviously policies and procedures around safeguarding and making sure that the project can be delivered safely and effectively. Just on concluding remarks, folks, again, you are at this stage, I imagine, coming today, you probably, by and large, most of you will have an idea whether this has been a fit for you. Hopefully, after listening to the presentation, particularly Andy and Maya's, you will start to get an understanding of what the expectations around this particular investment area is. There's an opportunity now from this period going forward to start to develop that idea further, build upon those initial conversations that you may have had with other people, and start to think about compiling the concept note and submitting that, and availing of the support that is available through this process. I suppose the term has been used before, don't bite off more than you can chew. There's an incredibly strategic and technical component to this particular investment area. So again, we ask people to be realistic around whether you can actually deliver something on this scale, and if you can't, to look elsewhere, to look how you collaborate, look how you link with other. And really, I suppose, being mindful again of the objectives and the targets and the result indicators for this particular programme, and also the wider focus on peace and prosperity. How can this project maybe differ from Interreg in many ways? How can this project contribute to the peace and prosperity outcomes that make this slightly distinctive under the PEACEPLUS programme? And again, I've mentioned the monitoring, the reporting and the evaluation requirements. It is important that you give consideration to that in terms of how you're going to manage that process. So just as a reminder, I just want to I suppose, say to people the support through the pre-application process is not mandatory. You may choose, you know what, we don't need to go down that road. But I suppose it's there. It's available to you. I will certainly, hopefully, be able to help you sharpen your bid in some way, strengthen it in some way, maybe look to how it add value to that in some way, and hopefully that will put you in better stead when the call opens. And I'm sure, again, we'll hear a little bit more about timelines in a moment from Declan. For now, folks, thank you. A reminder of the 10th of May. Doesn't matter when you submit that concept note, folks. Preferably even submit it sooner rather than later, and we can get the ball rolling in terms of the pre-application support. If you're like me and you leave it to the 10th of May, so be it, and we'll pick up thereafter, and we will hopefully add value to your process. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Fergal. And really comprehensive kind of overview of the process now from this point forward. I think Fergal summarised things quite well there in terms of some of the key kind of concluding remarks. But that point about this is informal. It's not scored in any way, the concept. So it's not mandatory, but it's strongly encouraged. And I think we made that point this morning as well, and Fergal's made it well there as well. So make the most of it, I suppose, and use the resource that's there, and all of the information from today, at this point in time, will be made available on the website. Ultimately, look, for all of us, I think everybody sitting in this room, but want to see high quality projects coming forward, and if this can contribute towards that, then I think that's where it will add value into the process. I think, picking up on the point again about peace and prosperity, really important to be thinking in those terms, and Fergal will help you with that over the course of the next number of weeks. Obviously, take account of the indicators as well, and the partnership. Again, to make the point, the opportunity for today, after today, use the QR code, put your information up on the website. If you are looking for partners, and to build on that, and of course during the concept note process with Fergal as well, he'll have full sight of everything that's come in, and I suppose, look, there's a lot of similarity there with permission from those developers. There might be a way to join things up as well, rather than people working on the same idea, in a competitive process. The other point just to make as well, and it came up earlier, is around verification. And again, when you're looking at the value for money section and you're building your budget, just to be mindful that there's a slightly different approach in terms of verification with PEACEPLUS than there would have been with Interreg, for example. So you need the built-in cost for the verification of the partner expenditure to be done within the project itself. So SEUPB won't be verifying partner expenditure. That's a role that will be within your project. There will be oversight, there will be training for the auditors that are doing that from SEUPB, and there will be sampling that's still necessary, and SEUPB will still be verifying the lead partner expenditure. But that's a new process this time around, and there'll be much more information on that. But it's important to think about costs around that as well, as all the other stuff that Fergal's mentioned around communication and administration becomes as standard.